And joining me now live to discuss the big news in Australia, the passage of those same-sex marriage laws, is the architect of the bill, the legislation, Dean Smith, who worked with others as well to bring about this historic change in Australia. Good morning, Dean.
Good morning, Sam.
You must have had a big night.
I've got a bit of what we call campaign flu, that when you've been immersed in a project for a long time, you suppress a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions. So now, with the project having come to a conclusion yesterday, I've got the fatigue, I've got a bit of the exhaustion. I'm looking forward to getting home to the West tonight. And this has been a 53-week project. 53 weeks. 53 weeks ago, the Senate established the Senate Select Committee. And what we saw yesterday with the final step has many, many ingredients. One of those ingredients was the Senate Select Committee process. And to be frank, one was the government's own exposure draft, which the Senate Select Committee looked at. Then, of course, we had the bill itself. We had the postal survey. So it's been a mammoth project.
Have you been invited to any weddings yet?
I got my first invitation yesterday, casually.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll get a few.
Yeah, so, I mean, how do you feel personally in terms of your family and your closest friends? Because you are going to go down in history now, in Australian history, as being part of this change, despite the fact that you weren't always an advocate of same-sex marriage. Tell us about your journey in relation to the issue.
Well, I feel as if I sort of owe all those other Dean Smiths in Australia a bit of an apology, because there are lots of Dean Smiths.
Yeah.
It's a pretty common name. I don't think the full magnitude of it has actually hit me yet, because I have been so, immersed in the project, and rightly or wrongly, I do apply myself to the detail. Worked very, very closely with Tim Wilson and Trent Zimmerman and Warren Entsch, and they had the House of Representatives hurdle was still an important hurdle. I think we got through that much better than many people thought. So the full magnitude of it hasn't sort of quite hit me yet. Yeah, because I'm a parliamentarian, coming to Parliament and doing my job. And in this task, we always had one job to do, and then the next job to do, and then the next job.
But you are a constitutional conservative. You didn't like the idea of a plebiscite.
Why
was that? Because the Australians have really showed that they voted with their feet. They really did like a chance to have their say.
Well, it's interesting, because I opposed the plebiscite very, very strongly, because I thought it was corrosive, that it undermined our parliamentary democracy, and that's a view I still hold. The postal survey, I did my best to argue against it publicly and in the party room. I lost that battle, but you're right, Australians embraced the postal survey, I think, because they wanted to send parliamentarians a very clear message.
To get on with it.
Get on with it, to be clear about what their view was, and we knew what their view was through a variety of opinion polls over many years. But it was a very, very clear message to get on with it. And I think it was that get on with it postal survey message that allowed the issue to be propelled through the Senate and allowed the issue to be propelled through the House of Representatives.
Was it ever a lonely experience, threatening, not voting for the plebiscite because you were opposed to that? And there was this discussion about whether or not you would cross the floor. Did you ever feel that your colleagues were angry with you when you kept on pushing it?
I think I can understand that colleagues were angry and disappointed for a variety of reasons. Some would be angry and disappointed because they did not want same-sex marriage legislated in our country, full stop. I've got a very different view. Some were angry and disappointed because they thought there were more important issues. And there are always more important issues, but this issue was important, not just because it was about same-sex marriage. I think what we saw in that postal survey result was a very clear statement about Australian values, Australian contemporary values. And I think there are some really important lessons in this for the Liberal Party. Really important lessons in this for the Liberal Party.
What are they?
Because if we are to be successful, if we are to win the next election, then we have to win the centre. We have to win the centre. Elections are not won chasing fringe. We must win the centre. And I think that when you listen to people's contributions, they talked about fairness and equality before the law.
But Malcolm Turnbull has been under a lot of pressure from Conservatives to take the party more to the right.
And why can that help, Malcolm? How can that help the government when we know that under a compulsory voting system it's important to be talking about issues that are relevant to the centre?
So you think that this result should send a message to Conservatives within the Liberal Party?
I think it should send a message to Liberals. 71 out of 76 Liberal seats, resounding outcome, very, very clear outcome. I mean, inside the Liberal Party, and I've been a member for 30 years, 5 of them as a senator, 25 before that, I'm not late to the Liberal Party, and when I stop becoming a senator, I'll still be a very active member of the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party is always going through a state of change in terms of which of its values sort of come to the forefront and which of them recede. We need to be very, very clear about making sure that we are talking to the majority of Australians on the centre-right and responding to their issues.
Okay, you have also always had quite a political take on this as well, which is that the Prime Minister needed to deal with this issue, that in resolving this issue you were actually doing the Liberal Party a favour. I'm not sure they always agreed with you, but why did you think that?
Look, I think you only have to walk around this building, and I've not been around the rest of the country in the last few days, to feel that sense of energy, to feel that sense of excitement. It is the currency of politics that difficult issues come forward. The challenge of politics is to make sure that they are managed as best as they can be. If we were starting from scratch, then I would be arguing for a parliamentary free vote again in the same way that I always did, and we would have had this issue resolved 4 or 5 months ago. I argue with the same result, and probably with that same level of euphoria. But these are awkward times for the country. Strong and clear leadership is important. Having dealt with this issue, I hope that now it does give the government an opportunity to sort of address economic issues, because they still are the bread and butter issues for ordinary Australians.
Just finally then, I mean, do you think this has strengthened Malcolm Turnbull's leadership? Do you think that he will go to the next election as the leader?
I think he'll definitely go to the election as the next leader. I think what this has enabled the Prime Minister to do is to establish a reconnection, if you like, with the community. The postal survey was a good success. It has been dealt with. The bill is a good bill. So I think it gives the Prime Minister an opportunity to sort of freshen people's attitudes to him, freshen their perception of him, and on the basis of that launch into debates and discussions and outcomes on issues that are really important to ordinary Australians. They are living standards, they are tax rates, they are budget repair.
Okay, so what's next for you? You've dealt with same-sex marriage and you didn't really want to become a poster boy for that issue necessarily. What are the issues now that you want to tackle?
Well, I think if there's something in this, I think it's I think what we can take from this is when we work together, or when there's a collective courage across the Parliament, we can address difficult issues. I'd argue that this might actually give us the opportunity to look at other issues that we thought were intractable, irreconcilable. I'd like to look again at federal-state financial relations. That's important for the Federation, that's important for our prosperity. I'm a big advocate for GST reform. That'll come right back onto my agenda. But there are other issues that I'd like to apply my dedication and my energy to. We have a terrible problem in Indigenous communities around STI and HIV infection rates. That issue needs much, much more attention. I will still be arguing for better support for mental health services for LGBTI people, most definitely. The survey result, the strong yes result, does not erase the pain that many, many people felt during that process.
All right, well, thanks a lot for your time today. Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Dean Smith. Meanwhile,